everyone, and welcome back to the Leap Before You Look podcast, where we are unmastering the art of overthinking, getting out of our head into our happy. On today's episode, I have joining me from Montreal, Canada, Miss Urmi Hossain. She is a self-published author, the self-published author of Discovering Your Identity, a rebirth from interracial struggle. She has also created a female-focused platform that empowers girls and women to take control of every aspect of their lives called Myways.ca. And she is currently working in a field that she loves and is passionate about, which is financial services. How are you today, Urmi?
I'm good, and you?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Um, I was able to read your book, and it was really inspiring to me because I feel like we have kind of similar backgrounds and upbringing. So I wanted to ask you, what was something that made you take the leap in writing your book?
Sure. So I always had the goal of writing a book. I just I just didn't know when it was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen this soon. I felt like it was like a long-term goal that I was eventually going to accomplish. But basically, this year, what happened is I read a similar book about this girl who's also South Asian like me, and she lives in Canada. And basically, her book was about her confessions about living in a South Asian household. And as I was reading her book, I could relate so much to it that it's almost it felt like she was telling my story. And so what happened is I actually reached out to her and asked her like, how are you dealing with all this? Why did you write this book? And she was telling me that the reason why she wrote this book was because she wanted to get all her thoughts out of her mind, and she wanted to have these confessions written somewhere. And as I was reading her book, I could resonate so much to her that I was like, our stories are so similar. And I felt like her writing this book was something that really helped me because it made me feel that I'm not alone in feeling all this. And so I would say that that was the something that triggered my interest or my desire to write my own book. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna read a book that says how to write a book. And I started to read things online. I started to actually read a book that is called How to Write a Book in 30 Days. And so I read that book, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to actually sit down and actually write my book. And the reason why I wrote it and I felt like it was important for me to write it is because the struggle that I went through when I was a kid that, was born in Italy and lived in a South Asian household, I went through a lot of struggle in fitting my place and into fitting somewhere. And I could see that this was something that could have helped other people as well. So I started to write the book, and I had already a lot of ideas in mind because this topic is something that I talk about a lot with a lot of my friends. And so I was like, I talk about this in many places. I talk about this in my blog. I talk about this in the different podcasts that I am invited. Why not write it somewhere so that maybe if someone wants to, read a book about this, they can pick up my book and see if they can relate to it. So so I started writing this book, and 30 days later it's actually completed. I had like the first draft ready, and then like I had someone on Fever who helped me to like edit it, format it, and then 2 weeks later it was already published on Amazon. And so I would say that what sparkled or what drove the interest or the desire for me to write this book was because I read a similar book prior to writing my book, and this girl was really an inspiration for me. So I went ahead and wrote my book.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. It's really interesting because while I was reading your book, I was like, we don't have the exact same, upbringing, but there are so many similarities, like when it comes to dating and just kind of being able to identify yourself. Um, and it actually brings me to my next question. What is something that pushed you to truly understand your identity apart from how you were raised?
So I would say that basically when I was a kid, often I would be told, or you're like, I would be told by, let's say, Italian people that I am Italian because I was born and raised there, or from people that were Bengali, I was being told that I'm Bengali. And somehow I didn't like being defined that way because I was like, it's not really representing who I am. But this was something that happened to me when I was a kid. So I never questioned it. I just accepted whatever they thought of me. But then when I came to Canada, people would ask me like, "Where are you from?" And I struggle a lot. I struggle because I was like, "What am I saying? Do I say I'm from Bangladesh? Do I say I'm from Italy?" And what I didn't like is that no matter which answer I gave, like sometimes I would tell them, "Oh, I am Italian," and people would question it because aesthetically I don't look Italian. And then if I would tell them, "Okay, I'm Bengali," people would still question it because they were like, but why do you have an accent when you speak English? Because I had like a very strong Italian accent, and so that's also was another reason why I was like, I think I need to look further into this, because I feel like whenever I'm saying I'm only Bengali or I'm Italian, I feel like I'm not saying the full story. I feel like there's a half of me that is missing there. And I always have to go a little bit deeper in explaining my origins, which is something that I don't want to spend. Like if someone asks you where are you from, you just want to say one thing. And sometimes I will actually spend 10 minutes explaining my whole history. And so a couple of years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say that I am Italian Bengali because these are the two cultures that really represent me. And so this is what I tell people going forward. And it's the people that made me really question a little bit about my identity and go a little bit into um, I would say the source to understand who am I really in this place? How do I want people to know me? And that's how I would say that I try to like explore it with my identity and how I want to be, um, shown or defined into this world, basically.
So would you say that that was one of the biggest struggles? Is really when it comes to understanding your identity, is to really connect the two.
It's not even connecting the two. I would say it's probably more about knowing who you are, because I
Mhm.
could just tell people I am Bengali, but it's me who have to decide that.
Okay.
It's not even connecting the two, because you can have people they have multiple ethnicity, but they want to be associated with one. It's choosing who you want to be. So that was important for me. I wanted to choose who I wanted to be, and I didn't want people to choose for me, basically.
The next question is actually what was one of the biggest struggles when it comes to embracing and understanding your identity? And I feel like you already answered that. Okay. I would say it takes courage and confidence to do what you do. What would you say if is something that what would you say or give advice on to help others who may have issues with having building their confidence, or what were some things that helped you become confident in who you are? That's probably a better question.
Um, what helped me to become confident? I think it was something that just built off through time. And I think it's because I let my curiosity to guide me. And so what happened is like I'm like really curious as a person. And so I just went on to try different things, and I decided to do things that were comfortable with what I wanted to do. And I also started to get out of my comfort zone to build up that confidence. So like, creating my blog, creating my YouTube channel, like that took me a lot of courage because I was so not comfortable with it. But I would tell you that doing all these things really helped me to build off my confidence. And I also started to build a better circle of friends. So I started to have people that were like uplifting me, people that were encouraging me, people who were supporting me, people that I could go and tell how I was thinking. And they also gave me a little bit of more confidence in believing myself. And I think that it's very important to build a good circle of friends, like it's really important to have that. And I would say that the other thing was writing down my goals. And so when I started to write down my goals and I started to journal and see the progress of my goals, I think every time I was able to accomplish something, it gave me a little bit of confidence. So an example that I could give you is with my book. I Funny thing is that I always wanted to write a book. I wrote it down in my 2020 goals that I wanted to write the book, but I forgot that I actually wrote that. So this year when I went to revisit my goals, I actually realized that I have accomplished a lot of the things that I have written. And so that gave me a little bit of confidence, gave me boost of adrenaline. And indeed, I'm actually ready to write a second one. So I think that everything that I'm able to accomplish accomplish the small little actions that I'm able to complete, they give me a little bit of confidence. So it's really just the actions, I would say, and having the right people around me that really help me to build confidence and to believe in myself.
Okay, it's funny that you say that you wrote it down and then later on you found that you accomplished it, because I did a vision board in 2019, and on the vision board I had like I was going to travel out the country, I was going to start a podcast, I was going to write a screenplay, and I'm like, wait a minute, everything that I put on my vision board is happening right now. Like I went to the first time I left the country was this year. I started a podcast and I'm working on like different like film type like screenwriting. I'm in a writing group and we're working on screenplays. So it's like it's that just really resonated with me. Like we can write those things down and it builds the confidence because sometimes you do it subconsciously and don't even realize it.
Yeah, and I do think the vision boards and writing down your goals really help you to manifest everything you want to achieve. And like you said, sometimes we do it, but we don't remember it's unconscious, and then somehow we like manage to get everything completed. So I do believe in that. I do believe in the power of manifestation.
Yeah. That's awesome. I've been working on that more. Um, when it comes to confidence, going back to what you said about knowing who you are, I am the mother. My son is multiracial, so he's interracial, he's multicultural, and sometimes I kind of struggle with understanding where he's coming from. So if you can give me, or if you could give younger children tips, or younger people who may be struggling with their identity or struggle with being interracial, multicultural, what are some tips that you can give someone that that is growing in that space that you grew up in?
So I do think that like kids especially, and this is what I would also tell to my younger self, is that you want to make sure that you're surrounded with the community that supports you. And I think that nowadays we do have many ways to like be part of a community. So I think it's important to see if you can join a community of people similar to you, where you can like really share your feelings, and it makes you feel less alone in this. Because I remember that when I was growing up, I wish I had someone like a mentor, someone older than me that could guide me, someone that I could look up to, someone to who I could ask opinions and guidance, but I never had that. And only now I have it. Only now that I'm like, let's say on social media, on Instagram, or like through volunteering, I'm able to find people that are similar like me, and I can ask questions. I can ask them like, how did you deal with this, or what do you think of this? And I think it's important to build a community. It's important to find the right people. And I think with social media now, we can also find community online. Like it doesn't have to be like physical, you don't have to go to a place to find similar like you. You have people on social media, you have celebrities, you have influencers that are always sharing their stories. And I think that it's important that if you don't want to feel alone in this journey, that you are part of a community of people that are there to support you and uplift you. But it's also important to see like, okay, how did these people went through this? And you, of course, with that you have blogs and you can read people's story. And this is how I also learned that I wasn't alone in this, because there was a girl who went through my same struggles, and she talks about this in her blog, and it made me reassured that, okay, I'm not crazy. Like it's not that I'm like abnormal, it's normal that I'm feeling this way. So this is what I would tell like younger kids, like just go and be part of your community, and make sure that you have the right people around you, because you're gonna have people that are gonna always bring you down because of whatever you say. They will always like judge you for whatever you're thinking, but you wanna have people that are like positive, uplifting you, that are non-judgmental. And I think that's so important. You want to make sure that these people are non-judgmental and they come from a place of like accepting you for who you are, basically.
Okay, so as a mom, what would you say? Well, for me, being a mom of a interracial child, do you have any tips or any suggestions that you feel like could help parents that are raising children multiculturally?
Yes, and I would say that as a parent, you never want to tell your son like, oh, let's say like you belong to a certain ethnicity. Let's say you're American, um, but let's say you're American and your child is born in another country, and I know you want to keep your roots. but you don't want to go and tell them, okay, you're American, you shouldn't be doing this. Americans do not do this, or let's say, I
Mhm.
don't know, Italians do not do this, because this is something I would hear a lot. I would always hear things like, oh, do you think of yourself like you're Italian, or you're only Bengali, you're not supposed to be behaving that way, you're only supposed to be behaving this way. And when they tell you this, I think the issue is that you sort of create a mindset that we are supposed to be just fitting a box. And you
Mhm.
want to avoid that. You really want to avoid that, because then you only think just one way, and that's the only way. And you forget about what's outside of this box. So you want to make sure that you're not telling this. And um, I think that when you are telling that particular sentence that, oh, you are only this, I think you already create a belief of limits. Like you're restricting you're restricting your kid from like seeing the world from a different perspective, but they should only see it from one perspective. So I don't know if this makes sense, but this is what I'm like saying, this, that you don't want to create a limiting self-belief basically, and you don't want them to like just focus towards being in being in that box. You want them to be like outside of that box basically.
Yeah, that I understand it a lot. So I try to encourage my son to be his, most authentic self. Um, and he's growing, he's 11, so he's growing into who he is. And I feel like sometimes he'll ask me questions when he comes home from school about like different identities, different ethnicities. And sometimes I'm like, of course I want to educate him, but I also want him to be able to like connect with myself and his father's background. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and actually, if I could add into it, I think as a parent, I know that everyone wants their kids to be like connected to their roots. And I think
Mhm.
there is nothing wrong to that, because I think it just adds to the diversity. But I also think that, and this is one thing that one of my teachers told me, and also one of my friends told me, was that like our job is to give birth to this creature, to this human being, but then it's also our job to like let them go and choose their path rather than us choosing for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Then my dad has his input. He's like, we're just supposed to help him along the way, and support him. So I definitely agree. Another question I have for you is, what is something that you did for yourself as a part of defining your identity that you are most proud of?
I would probably say just accepting myself for who I am. I think it just comes from a place of self love. Because because I always struggled in like fitting somewhere. I always almost didn't like the fact that I had like these two different ethnicity. But now that I live in Canada, which is such a multicultural country, it's easy to blend in, and it's easy to be who you want to be, because there are other people like me, people that have like three, four ethnicity, because I don't know, their mother is from somewhere, their father is from somewhere else. But I think it's like the diversity, it's an asset. So I actually accept myself for who I am, and I do think that I do bring different perspective. Being a South Asian girl, being a girl who's born in Italy, I can bring that perspective. And now that I live in Canada, I feel like I also bring the third perspective. And so I see myself as a global citizen who has different perspective on the world. So I like the thing that I am most proud about me is that I'm able to accept myself for who I am, and see myself see these features more as a strength rather than a weakness, basically.
Okay, that's awesome. I do want to switch gears because I am slightly fascinated with your take on fear. I read your article in Humans of 2020, which was a letter to your younger self. And I want to quote, if it's okay with you, do say a couple quotes from that letter you had for yourself that really resonated with me. So the first thing you said is, as humans, we are afraid of change. We are afraid of failing. We are afraid of speaking up. But what's the worst that can happen if you never try? And that's nothing. And I said, yes, that is very true. something else that you said is we are willing to are we willing to let go of an opportunity because of uncertainty? What if by never trying we don't find our true happiness and self-fulfillment? What if we don't learn about our true selves? um and you said in finance that they say the higher the risk, the higher the reward. And sometimes living on the edge brings the biggest rewards in life. And I wanted you to kind of expound more on your philosophy and your take on fear, because you also said that fear is your friend. So I thought that was interesting.
Yes, and I would probably read that to my yes, I did write that to my younger self. And if I had my younger self in front of me, I would probably read that letter again. And I would say it's because I grew up with a mindset of like always being fearful of things, and often I would let my fear stop me from trying things. And I feel like sometimes because of that, I never really let myself evolve to the person I wanted to be. I never let myself explore the things I wanted to explore when I was a younger kid, when I was a teenager, for instance. Like I would often like not question things. I would often refrain from doing things because of this fear that was always holding me back. And I think that this is something that I carried with me for a long time. Like even now that I'm like much older, I still had it for the longest time. But then I read a book which was called My Dear Friend Fear or something like that. I just do not remember the exact name of the book, but I wanted to read that book because I wanted to have a different perspective of fear. Because sometimes when we think of fear, we always associate it to something negative. But then there is this whole concept of like, the fear is always associated with uncertainty, and there is this whole concept in finance that says higher the risk, higher the return. And I was like, let me just see how I can connect the two. And I often think that when you do the most fearful thing, it actually brings the best out of you. And I think fear is really our friend because it's there to really bring you to the path of success. And why I'm saying this is because I feel like I often let my fear guide my decision in many of the things. And I'm trying to do that because so far I feel like I was able to untap different potentials in me that I was not aware of if I didn't follow my fear. So, for instance, the fact that I joined Toastmaster, which is a public speaking club. It was probably the best decision that I have made because I wouldn't be here today doing an interview podcast. Because what happened is every time I would go to this Toastmaster club to like give presentation, I would be so scared to the point that I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to go back home. But I was glad that I actually let my fear to guide me and to actually like make sure that I was actually attending these clubs. Because even though I was scared, and even though every time I would like speak up and I would be super super scared, super nervous, I'm glad that I did that because I would feel a little bit better than the day before. And every time I did that, I feel like I was building up confidence that I would have not been able to do if I wasn't actually letting my fear to guide me. And so far, like fear really helped me to like build success because I feel like I'm much more comfortable when it comes to speaking with people. I'm much more comfortable when it comes to like doing podcasts with people. And I do think that fear is it's really the tool that will help you to really grow personally. And it's also what helps you to, I think, to find yourself and to be the best version of yourself, because it's really not your enemy. It's the light that it's meant to guide us, which was the quotation from the book. And I do think of fear as being really the light that will bring me to the path of success. So far it did, and so I do recommend people, or highly suggest people to follow their fears. Because I think if we were not following fear, we would always be in our bubble. We would do things that are comfortable for us, and I don't think you will grow as a person if you're just being within your bubble, basically.
Yeah,
So
I definitely I hear people say do it scared, but I feel
yes,
like your take is like embrace it and it's your
yeah,
friend. So I definitely like I really appreciate I really enjoy reading your take on fear. And I was thinking like sometimes even with like careers in life, we can have the momentum and the like this desire to do something, but we're so afraid that it keeps us kind of running in one spot. We don't really make the forward movement that we need to make when it comes to that because of fear. So I love that. I love that so much. um, so what do you have coming up? Like what can we look out for? What type of things do you have coming up when it comes to what fears are you facing? What different events or different works that you have coming up that we can look out for?
Uh, well, I do have a couple of things planned up for this year, and I think the fact that I did a lot of personal branding, people actually approach me and they want me to give workshops and to give workshop for your organization where they're trying to empower girls, and this was always like my dreams to empower girls and to share my experience. So I do have a couple of projects in terms of like partnering up with organizations and give workshops. I do have in plan to write my second book. I just do not know when it's happening, but hopefully it will happen very soon. And I do want to continue sharing these confessions and these things that happen, to third culture kid and also brown girls or South Asian girls. So I do want to write my second book, and I of course want to create courses in Italian, because I just enjoy, like, I teach Italian. I want to have a course created, and of course I want to have course created in finance because it is my passions and I want people to actually learn. So these are some of the things I have in mind, and of course, my biggest dream is to give a TED talk, which is why I started public speaking to begin with.
Okay.
So I do want to deliver a TED talk sometime soon. I keep saying it, hopefully it will happen. So I'm like trying to manifest it right there. So yeah, these are some of the things I have in mind.
Okay, I'm definitely going to be looking out for all of that, especially your TED Talk. And I would love to have you back to talk about finance because I definitely know some people can be afraid of investing in finances and like kind of taking that leap to take control of the their financial aspects of their life. Where can we find you online?
So I do have a blog which is called Myways.ca. People can just like type Myways.ca. I have a YouTube channel which is called Urmi Hossain, and there I talk about like public speaking, learning a language. I also have interviews with people that with who I talk about mental health. Interviews where I have people that teach Italian, and if they want to take courses with them, I talk about that. They can also find me on LinkedIn, which is my full name. They just have to take my full name, Urmi Hossain. And I also have my blog. No, sorry. I also have my book, which is available on Amazon, and it's called Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. And last but not least, my Instagram account is called Urmi Mio. So they can just type there, and there I have all the interviews that I have done, all the podcast interviews that I have done, and people can just go and like watch them.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, and then I think I have one last thing for you to give the audience. So, if you could give one piece of advice for someone who may be struggling with their identity or even embracing fear that is keeping them running in place, like I said a little earlier, what would that be? That advice?
Okay, so in terms of like finding your identity, I would definitely say that when you're not fitting the box, you create the box. That's one. And for fear, what I would say is that never choose whatever is comfortable, choose the most uncomfortable option. And because I think that when you choose the most uncomfortable option, you are leading yourself to a success. And I think you're just helping yourself to become the better version of yourself and find yourself. So I would always say, like, when you have two options, like one that it's like scary and one that is like not that scary,
Mhm.
always go with the scariest one, I would say. Because as I said, higher the risk, higher the return.
Right.
So yeah.
It's like the Matrix: pick the red pill or the blue pill.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Urmi, for coming on my podcast and being my first
Thank you.
guest. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed chatting with you about identity and facing your fears. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to having you on again later.
Yeah,
Later
thank
today.
you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.